Cost of civic center activities are not to be borne by the school and school district and have an impact on classroom instruction. Allows use by nonprofits. There are special stipulations in the law for nonprofits, and we have a nonprofit rate that is reflected on direct cost. So we don't make a profit on the nonprofits, we just cover our costs. And districts should recuperate minimum their direct costs. SB 1404 was enacted in 2012 and it further enhanced or amended the Civic Center Act. Go ahead and next, thank you. One of the big differences that SB 1404 brought was in the way that we calculate our costs. And what costs are, that's coming back, what are our groups doing that are using them? Are they nonprofit? Are they benefiting kids in the district? And that's how we determine which of the rates are used. And district this is one nuance to the law. Maybe Tom can explain a little more if he understands it, but the capital portion of the cost, we cannot pass that on for classroom space. If we're using classroom space is carved out in the law, and it can only we can only charge our direct costs, operational costs for classroom space. So we brought on, go ahead, Chief, thank you. We brought on the Rayburn firm to help us do this. This was an extensive project. I'm going to invite Tom Rayburn up, and he's going to go through the methodology used, and then he's going to go through a sample of some of the data that we pulled, so you have an idea of how extensive this was, and then an example of the CDE cost calculator, so you can see just exactly how we came up with each one of these rates. Thank you.
Dr. Farouk, trustees, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Just to kind of give you some background for my firm, I've been involved with the Civic Center Act going back to the late 1990s. I used to be a former director of MOT. My esteemed colleague Mike Patton is former executive director MOT. So we have decades of experience managing school facilities and are intimately familiar with the process, the challenges, and the facilities, the cost component of this. In conducting this, and if I could have you go to the next slide, in stepping through the process to ensure that you in fact have a cost-effective, defendable system, what we did, I'll go ahead and highlight, we reversed engineered using this spreadsheet, which you have before you, which is the CDE calculator. So that's the California Department of Ed calculator. Our mission has always been as acting in a fiduciary responsibility has always been to accurately ensure that the use of facilities per the Civic Center Act doesn't impact the general fund, meaning it's cost neutral. This CDE calculator is a state-approved methodology that we use and other districts use, and we've used at dozens of districts per the state's direction to establish what the costs are. Now here's the real kicker with this. With the data points that are collected for this CDE calculator, they take into account, for example, some of the interview questions we had. We took into account accounting, facilities, your 2016 long-term facilities master plan. We interviewed staff site, the Ramona Theater. We actually came into the district to collect all the data points necessary to ensure that you have a defensible, accurate cost so that you know, and this is one of the things that's really difficult, not so that you can raise prices or lower prices, but rather so that you know what they should be, period. This document is designed to give you per type of space an actual cost for classrooms, for fields, for courts, for every space, MPRs, music rooms. Now the district has a state-approved cost mechanism that at least you have a base to where you can start at. Now some of the data points in here, square footage for example, that's something that doesn't change. So this multi-purpose room here, it has, I don't know, 10,000 square feet to it. So to be able to extrapolate what the utility costs are, what the cleaning costs are, what the modernization costs are, those are in fact the components of this form. And going forward, you will now have a method to know at least what the costs are, whether you move on that. And this also applies to the fees. With the fee schedule, whether you move on that to raise or to write the fees to their actual cost, that is your decision. But I want to highlight, we chose to be truthful and accurate with this. So some of the fees, when you look at the fee schedule, you'll notice some of your fees were spot on, didn't go up at all. You'll notice that there were other fees that perhaps charged $40 for the entire day. Well, now that's $20 an hour. So you'll be able to look at those and you'll be able to go right to this spreadsheet and determine per the state's formula why that was the case. So whether the cost went up significantly or not at all, at least now you'll know what the truth is, and that's a great place to start. One of the key components for this is not to be able to have costs of the general fund subsidize use. So one of the key things that Mr. Mueller highlighted was cost neutrality. That's one of the main factors, and that is the point of the Civic Center Act, so that general fund dollars are not used to subsidize private businesses, other operations. Now, there's all kinds of options that you have as a board to act upon that, but our job was to make sure that you had this before you. Can we go to the next slide? Now, on your presentation, you have this. I would like to highlight that everything is spelled out right in the formula. So hours of operation, proportional use, all these things that are part of the Civic Center Act, this is a verbatim, straight through way to do that calculation. So they will actually have every detail provided by staff. So actually, that's really the bottom line. Are there any questions or?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay.
So the crux of the matter is really the next slide, and you have this before you on an 8.5 by 11, and this is our comparative rate sheet. Thanks. This is our comparative rate sheet that we put out there, and this gives the first column. In the green is our group 2 or nonprofit rates. I'll go right at the top one, which is a field or practice or soccer field, and the rate is 26. I didn't put my glasses on. 03 per hour. You can see that went. I'm okay. You can see that went from a daily rate because the next column is our current fee that is adopted. Then you can go to group 3, which is a fair market value. So non-profit entities or for-profit entities, we charge fair market value. You can see what our existing fee in the clear one, just to the right of that, and then the final column, final blue column, is actually a survey that was done of over 30 districts and other municipalities that put out their facilities within the area to get an average, and that's the average fee. And that's how we determine what our fair market value would be on there. The following page that you have is just the final of how it would look, because we would take all the comparative data out. But that's pretty much where we are at. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer them. We would be happy to answer them.
Yeah, we'll go to the public first. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mueller. We'll now take public input on this item before the board deliberates themselves. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
So because we have, it's our board policy that when we have speakers exceeding 20 minutes total, that we cap the debate to 20 minutes aggregately. So we have 7 speakers and 20 minutes total between all of them. And we'll just proceed one by one, and please take note of the total time that we have. Our first speaker is Rick Pays.
Hey, thank you. I first want to thank the Riverside Unified School District Board for allowing us the opportunity to share the success of Riverside City Football Club and the impact it has had on Riverside and the community. There are so many families that will be impacted by this fee schedule. Just a fraction of them are here. If you're here in support of Riverside City Football Club, can you raise your hand and stand up, please? And like I said before, this is a fraction of the people that are going to be impacted by your decision today. My name is Rick Pais. I am one of the club founders as well as vice president of the board. I am a Riverside resident. I own a business in the city of Riverside. My son was just promoted from Gage Middle School, and he'll be attending Poly this coming year. He's on the 05 Boys program and has participated since it started, and it's had a huge impact on his life. At Riverside City, we want to open the doors and opportunities for student athletes from all socioeconomic backgrounds right here in our home of Riverside. There is no other program in the community that shares the roots of Riverside and the organic culture of family like we express in our club philosophy. Our vision at Riverside City Football Club is a holistic education through everyday life lessons and development in the game of soccer. As a nonprofit organization, our vision is to serve and provide for the students of Riverside Unified School District and our community through scholarships, academic support, education and responsibility, independence, integration in our environment, and individual growth inside and outside the classroom through athletics. Since our inception, we have been fortunate enough to award nearly $60,000 in player club fee scholarships to deserving student athletes whose families experience financial hardship. Beyond our service of over 200 student athletes from RUSD and an additional 100 junior student athletes in our junior academy program, I would like to highlight one or two graduating classes that we are proud to announce at RCFC. Class of 2018, 13 graduating seniors, 11 went on to a four-year university, 1 into the military, 1 to a 2-year college at colleges such as UCR, Sonoma State, Cal State San Marcos, Cal Baptist University, and UC Merced, just to name a few. Out of the 11 that went to a 4-year university, 7 of them were offered a spot to compete as a student athlete at the NCAA Division I, II, III, and NAIA level. 4 of the 7 were first-generation students attending college. Class of 2019, 15 graduating seniors, 7 went on to 4-year universities, and 7 to a 2-year college, such as Palomar-Pitzer, Cal State East Bay, Cal State San Bernardino, and Cal Poly Pomona. Out of the 7 that went on to 4-year universities, 4 of them were offered a spot to compete as student athletes at the NCAA Division I, II, III, NAIA level, and 2 first-generation students attending college. To top it off, one of the graduates was the valedictorian, posting a GPA over 4.0 and becoming the first member of his family to attend college. Ultimately, I strongly feel that RCFC is creating an environment and culture that promotes success inside and outside of the classroom with our community and surrounding areas. It is an honor to be one of the leaders of this nonprofit organization. I look forward to many more years of service supporting our RUSD student athletes and community members in creating amazing men and women for our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rick. Our next speaker is Robert Lenox. There's 15 minutes and 51 seconds for the remaining 6 speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Board President. Good evening, Board President and trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and address you today. My name is Robert Lenox, residing at 18223 Cross Road, Riverside, California. I'm a Riverside native, also a Poly High School graduate. I serve as the club president for RCFC. I'm a father of a 12 and 8-year-old, both RCFC players and RUSD students. In 2018, staff was informed by, our staff was informed by your district staff about increased permit fees without much of a transition period. When we asked if there had been any fee study completed or a new fee schedule adopted, district staff said no, but that one was in progress, conveniently. We negotiated with district staff to agree upon interim fees until the study was complete. They had quoted us fees that had changed multiple times and were at the time cost prohibitive for our use of Arlington High School turf field and on a recurring and routine basis. In response, we had to increase our club player fees moderately to cover interim adjusted fees for the field use alone. Arlington High School grass field, just so that you know, has not been renovated in several years despite the assessment of those fees. Restrooms are infrequently accessible. Access gates are sporadically locked despite RCFC paying all permit fees in a timely manner. Additionally, RCFC field permit and lease expenses for the prior year were approximately $35,000. RCFC players include approximately 80% RUSD students, families that are already paying for RUSD facilities through their property taxes. Also, I'd like to highlight that RCFC board is a volunteer board, unpaid. The only individuals who are paid in our organization are our coaches. The communication with district staff leadership has been challenging over this period of time. Typically, it takes about 2 to 4 weeks for leadership to respond to emails and inquiries. District staff released a copy of the fee study and proposed new schedule just 3 weeks ago, despite RCFC requesting nearly 4 months prior. Typically, RCFC permit use at Arlington High School is 5 to 6 hours per day or evening, Monday through Thursday, 2 hours on Fridays, and occasional Saturday, Sunday use for scrimmages in the off season. During our season of play, we do utilize the fields on Saturdays and Sundays for league games. So what do these fees mean for us and how they will impact us? The proposed fees would result in a 13% increase of permit costs for use of the grass fields at night over what we currently pay. It would also result in a 34% increase in costs for use of those grass fields during the day. For the synthetic turf field, it would result in 57% increase in costs for night play and a staggering 455% increase for use of the turf field during the day over what's currently charged. To afford these fees, RCFC would need to raise player club fees and dues anywhere from $100 to almost $200 per player. RCFC would not be able to afford the scholarship to families with the financial hardships that was mentioned earlier. RCFC proposed a volunteer project to assist with field renovation at Arlington High School back in March and just recently got approved by district staff to commence. We have invested $6,000 in material costs for the aeration, fertilization, and overseeding of the grass. RCFC is prepared to make this an annual project and investment as a partnership with the district. Arlington High School grass is to be closed now through August 4th for the grow-in period. I will point out that there is a shortage of athletic fields throughout the city. You'll find that noted in the City of Riverside's current Parks Master Plan, which is under progress right now, and will be presented at City Council shortly. That plan does include an assessment of district facilities as well as their own. So what RCFC is seeking from the board this evening is possibly one of the following actions. 1, best case scenario would be don't raise fees. 2, perhaps direct district staff to present you with an alternate user group level that accounts for nonprofit status and a high percentage of our USD students. Or 3, direct district staff to negotiate a standalone facilities use agreement or MOU between RUSD and RCFC for use of school facilities that exempts the club from adopted fees and sets aside a different fee schedule for our use, considering the long-term partnership. To be clear and specific, our biggest concern, as you can see in the proposed schedule, is the cost for use of a synthetic turf field, a dramatic increase over what was charged in the past and what's even being charged in the interim. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Our next speaker is Omid Hamzinejad.
All right, thank you for your time. My name is Omid Hamzinejad. I'm a Riverside resident, homeowner, taxpayer in the local city. These are my two boys, Ashton and Aiden, the Riverside Unified School District students, student athletes. The same student athletes that I believe everybody on the board has taken a position to defend and to help them grow as students, as athletes, as being future contributors to our society. So just something to think about as you're making a vote based off numbers that somebody that has no insight into the local community, and think about the students that are going to be impacted, your students, our students, all the students that are here today. A little bit of our story. My boys have been playing soccer since they were 4 years old. They've competed in City of Riverside, AYSO, the Grove Church soccer community, and have reached a point where it's no longer competitive. And for their passion in soccer, they weren't excelling where they needed to. So what the next step is to find a club organization. Club organizations are extremely expensive to join unless if you're wealthy. Riverside City FC is the only one that the primary focus has been to establish a reasonable fee that the local population, the income that we currently have in Riverside can afford. This is not Beverly Hills, this is not Laguna Niguel. I don't know, I'm sure there's school districts all over that have $1 million donations that help with their facilities. This is Riverside that we're talking about here. The income is different. Riverside City has established an opportunity for everybody in Riverside to afford that next level of soccer, next level of improvement in the sport that they're passionate about. So by raising the fees will impact our local community. That's why I'm here, to talk about that. I mean, our boys 09 team, been together for about 10 months. They competed in State Cup, made it past the first round, which was a great accomplishment for them to being a brand new team. Recently, they competed in a Temecula tournament, were undefeated, won the championship, so. So anyways, I'll make it short, but this is about the kids. This is about the people that you're on the board to try to defend, to try to support, not fee schedules and numbers on a fancy chart that who knows where they came from. Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. There are 4 speakers left with a total of 7 minutes and 33 seconds on this topic. Our next speaker is Katasha Rideout.
Good evening, board members. Board policy states the vision of the district and board should recognize the unique role of students, parents, staff, and community partners in contributing to a high-quality education for all students. Board policy also states your role and responsibility as the Board of Education is to set the direction for the district. Tonight, we are asking you, as the board that represents the community, to evaluate rate increases to community partners that take part in the development of students you have made an oath to support. The district's vision has been to provide engaging, motivating, and innovating learning experiences for all students. This can only be possible with the unity of the board, district leadership, community partners, and parents. As such, we are asking you to look at the proposed increases and recognize your community partners as vital to this process. Please do not price us out of this relationship. We have voted you board members to be our voices. Please do not let us down. We recognize you will be given proposed facts as to the reason these fees must be increased. What is not reported to you is the value that is provided to the district that is not quantifiable from your business department. Let me give you an example. The RUSD is extraordinary in the inclusion of curricular and extracurricular programs. The students that are part of RCFC are part of the health academies, biomedical programs, engineering program, STEM, athletic, and arts activities promoted by the district. Our club supports the mission and vision of the district by ensuring our players are excellent players and students. They are extraordinary and have excellent academic acumen, as well as represent the values we want in every member of the Riverside community. The fact that our players practice at the local high school is a direct support of each and every extracurricular program in the district. You have a community partner that is improving the outcomes of students we serve. We support the school programs. A vote to increase these rates is a vote against community partners and expanding opportunities for our students. As a community partner and members of this community, we are asking you to be extraordinary in your vote regarding fee increases. We are not a soccer club made of players from different cities that simply utilize Arlington High School facilities. We are the extraordinary students, extraordinary parents, extraordinary community partners of this district. We hope you will make decisions that continue to provide engaging, motivating, and innovating learning experience for all students. We have supported you. Now it's your turn to support us. Thank you.
Thank you. There are three speakers left and a total of 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Our next speaker is Lindsay Gorecki.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I would like to start off by telling you a little background about these girls. I have a daughter on the team. We would not have been able to come to club at an aggressive level that my daughter was playing at if it weren't for RCFC that proposed a fee schedule for us that was set up intent on that works off of my income and my level of ability to be at that field of a decent field to have her there and expand her soccer skills. Standing behind me is Coach Angel. He has approached me 2 years ago asking my daughter to play and had promised me that the club would not give me any big surprises. Well, this is a surprise. And without them giving the opportunity to pay monthly, my daughter would not be allowed to play. If this proposed price increases are voted in favor of you guys will be single-handedly be removing any future potentially astonishing club soccer players from the team without even giving them the opportunity. Sorry, I'm winded. So with that being said, on behalf of the girls 2009 soccer club team from RCFC, we'd like to thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. We have two speakers left with 3 minutes and 20 seconds for the topic. Sonia Allendor.
Good morning, or good evening, board. I'd like to thank you guys for allowing RCFC to use your fields. You don't have to, but it's very much appreciated. Tom, I remember how involved you were with your children's athletic achievements, and I think it's important for kids to be in sports. It's very fundamental to building good characteristics. In my opinion, I think that this item needs to be reworked. It's unreasonable to try to make up for 5 years of a flat fee with a huge increase in 1 year. State guidelines say that you are to establish and maintain a fee schedule. Why was this not done in the last 5 years? This proposal has a huge fee increase and will negatively impact these important youth programs. These costs will have been passed down to players' families, making it unaffordable for some players to continue to play in this club. In fairness, and in the spirit of fairness, I think that these fee increases should be phased in over a longer period of time. What I did not see in the presentation was, is this the percentage of the actual increase from what the consultant studied was? And I would just wonder if they had that, because they stated in 2014 it was just flat increase of 5%. So, and hopefully the other speakers can speak.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Ocean Rideout. You have a minute, 43 seconds. Thank you.
Good evening, Board President, Superintendent Hansen, members of the Board, Cabinet, and community. My name is Ocean Rideout, and I am the current 10th grade ASB president at Arlington High School. I carry a 4.0 GPA, I take part in 3 varsity sports, and I plan to be a part of the Media Arts program this upcoming school year. This evening, I would like to speak to you about opportunity and give you a face to what your decision will impact. My day typically begins at 6 a.m. with cross-country practice. From here, I go to classes. After school, I take part with either high school soccer, track or field, and ASB activities. Once this ends, I go to club soccer, which takes place at Arlington High School. The reason I tell you this is because this extremely rigorous schedule gives me the opportunity to excel. My freshman year has been amazing, allowing me to take part in school leadership, having the opportunity to win 3 league championships in track and field, as well as qualifying for CIF. I can honestly tell you that my success is directly related to all the community partners in Arlington High School family, including Riverside FC. If this club is forced to move due to the increased fees, it will directly affect my success at Arlington High School, as I will be forced to give up many of the school curricular and extracurricular activities that have supported me in being the best version of myself. I would appreciate your vote to allow this community activity to support my success at Arlington. My school and community are intertwined. Please don't take this away. Superintendent Hansen, you once said that you provide experiences for each and every student to maximize their potential, create equity, and allow students to be cultivated. I hope you will support me and the rest of students you see here to continue access to a community activity that directly impacts the education I am able to participate in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everyone, for your public input. Ms. Kakish.
So I know this is a very controversial item, obviously. I want to reiterate that staff, and I know on behalf of the board, we value all the partnerships within our community. We value all of the outside groups, nonprofit, for-profit, that have supported RUSD. But I do want to just relay the facts just so for context, because I know some of the members in the audience probably have not heard about some of the conditions within our district with regards to facilities and funding. And so the study before you, really, that what you just saw, which was presented to the operations subcommittee and has gone in detail as far as in-depth information, is only pointing out that currently the general fund is subsidizing the activities. That's really what the study is pointing out. So with that, along with the law that has changed for us to disclose all of the cost for any other outside groups to use our facilities, it put us in a position to have to analyze the fees and bring to your attention the subsidy from general fund. Again, it was mentioned that it has not been done in the last 10 years. The district has gone also through this time through a facilities master plan that identified that we have a need of $1.3 billion in order for us to renovate the facilities that we currently have, along with the turf that is existent, that in need, specifically at King and Arlington, in need of renovation and in need of replacement, which we don't have the money for, and we still actually might not get to it with the general obligation bond that we just passed. We also have reduced deferred maintenance dollars drastically. We practically don't have a program for deferred maintenance to even put the fields or any of the facilities renovations, such as a multipurpose room like this, that could be used in order for us to continue to maintain it. Now, as a condition of facilities matching funds from the state of California, the district has to maintain the current facilities that used 50% match from the state. So we are doing our best to keep that up. And currently general fund is bearing some of that cost. We also just gone through an $11.3 million of cuts from general fund. What we did with that process was very methodical to continue to keep cuts away from the classroom, to continue to keep all the programs available for the district. And we have exhausted all of our efforts to do that. And we know that we've stabilized the budget, which will be presented to you today in another item. But we know that we turn to next year and the cost will be increasing, and we might also face few challenges from the economy that is already in the projection. So the next steps for cuts will be to programs that are existing within the day of instruction. If we don't continue to make our operation more efficient and continue to make sure that everything that gets used in our district is at least paying for itself and self-sustaining, we will be depleting general fund dollars that we actually would be touching programs that affect students. So I only bring this as a context. I know as a board you are familiar with the whole process, but I know some of the audience have not heard about it, because we did make every effort to keep all of these cuts away from layoffs of teachers, away from layoffs of employees as classified, away from the classroom, away from increasing class size. But if we were to not continue to be frugal and make sure that we are charging outside groups what we pay for. We're not charging anymore actually to nonprofit. We do have a different rates. We will be in a position where general fund dollars could be depleted and taken away from other programs that we want to safeguard within our instructional day and after school programs that are also in the budget. So I just wanted to point out, I know it's a tough decision, but I thought this context would be important to reiterate for mainly the audience to know what the district is going through as far as challenges. And I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kakish. We'll begin with Trustee Alavi.
I just have a couple of questions, and maybe Mr. Mueller can help me, or the consultants. So I know that we have many, many more groups that have to use our facilities other than our CFC, which sounds like a very good tenant to our fields, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that they have done to be a helping hand, and I thank all of them for coming tonight and speaking. But I would be curious how many groups are now currently using our facilities, especially nonprofit groups. And I would also be interested in whether or not these fees are meant to maintain them or improve them. In other words, will these fee increases, is this just to maintain the condition of the facilities as they are?
These fees are to pay for the operational cost of the facility when it's being used. So let's say a church is using this multi-purpose room. It incorporates the lighting for the duration that they use it, incorporates the cleaning of the room, the custodial staff that gets attended to that during the time that they use it.
And part of the SB 1404 change was capital costs. So yes, it is prorated out for the life of a system. And we'll go back to this building. The air conditioning is life cycled at 25 or 30 years. And that is factored in there, what it will take to maintain and perform the deferred maintenance and capital renewal on there. One important thing to note, and is a significant change in the new fees, is that these also include our operational costs, which include our custodial costs in the hourly cost, which that has not been the practice that we've been doing. So if we were renting out this building for a church, we would have a separate line item on our use permit that was the hourly rate for the custodian assigned for that, for the cleanup, for opening, for securing. All of that, all operational and all capital costs are included in the hourly rate for all the facilities now. And that's a consistency piece that we needed to address as we went through and did this study.
How many different groups do you suppose?
I am not prepared to give you that answer, but I'm more than happy to follow up, but it is significant.
Okay. Our next question is from Dr. Hanson. Did you want to say something? Okay. Trustee Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. A couple questions. So in this large piece of paper that you gave us, so I just want to make sure I understand this right. So the proportional use by outside groups was determined to be 16% or 15.9%?
That is correct, and that's directly from our facilities use permits.
Okay.
And that's across our entire inventory of that type of facility. And there's a worksheet like that for every facility on our line item in our fee schedule.
So these hourly fees were calculated based upon the proportional cost of
That is
16% of the total fees?
That is correct.
Okay. And then I had a question. Mr. Lennox, I think, brought it up. He mentioned that there was some adjusted fees in the interim. Was there any adjusted fees?
One of the things that Mr. Lennox and I had several conversations on, and really what precipitated this extensive study is looking at, and as I started looking for the justification of our current fees, I couldn't do that. And I started looking at some, and one specific one that we did discount was the charge for the field lighting. As he brought that to our attention, and as I started to look at that, that was some adjustments that I made right there. And it really is what precipitated this study, because we needed to have all this background documentation. So as Mr. Rayburn said, that all of our fees are defensible.
Okay. And I mean, I realize that our decision tonight is the soccer fees are the soccer field fees are just one line item on this larger fee schedule.
That is correct.
But I'm still trying to understand, in this specific case, since there's so many people here today, let's say a year ago, what were the soccer field facility use fees, and what are they now, prior to this fee schedule?
I'm sorry, per hour.
Per hour, that is correct.
Okay.
And that includes any custodial fees or anything that would be associated with the use of that facility.
Okay, thanks. And so the existing fees, they're now paying $63 a day, and that would be a 4-hour block or a 5-hour block. What is that?
There's no limit on it in our
Okay.
current rate.
There's no limit.
Yeah.
And the gentleman, I think Mr. Lennox or Mr. Pace, said they're there about 5 hours.
Yeah. And then depending on the custodial need for that directed by the school site, then they would be subject to custodial at their hourly rate based on our fee schedule.
On top of that hourly?
On top of that, yes.
And how about the day? Are they subject? Is it just flat 63 for everything?
That's for the field use, yes.
And what about for the custodial?
Custodial is hourly because we pay them on a time card. So that would be a separate line item in their invoice for the use.
So they're paying $63 a day plus custodial if they voted custodial.
That is correct.
The proposal is $26.03 an hour plus custodial.
No, include that, and that includes custodial, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. I want to ask a clarifying question to one of Mr. Lennox, just not a question, may I please, just about what he was saying. Okay, Mr. Lennox, are you still here? Hi. You brought your family with you.
Yeah,
Good for
I think
you.
so.
Good for you. He's got a big one, that's right. Mr. Lennox, help me understand. If you were to rent this room from us, right, the fire marshal says you can only have X amount of people in this room, so we can understand that now. How many young people in your soccer club are at a practice on a day, so we can get a size of the use of the participants?
Sure. Using Arlington High School
yes, sir.
turf or soccer, I should say grass field as an example, we might see anywhere from 50 to 70 kids out there per evening.
50 to 70.
Correct, and it is not the only field we use within the region for our practice evenings.
So for a 5-hour, 4-hour period, 50 to 70 children, and that's everybody.
That's everybody.
And why do you want to use, and just so you know, right, for instance, artificial turf, as great as it is, I love it, but it goes away. I mean, the one at King is thoroughbred. We have to first be concerned about our students, though I understand that young people behind you, majority of them are our students, but that's about over, Mr. Mueller, I think it's 1.3 now, 1.4 to replace it, which is about 40% more than it was a few years ago. So that's sort of our dilemma. But so under 100 children at each one of your practices?
Each day.
All right. Thank you for that answer. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, Mr. Mueller, can we answer first the young lady, Ms. Aladar's question about these figures that you're presenting to us? Are the figures given to you by your consultants? How did you reach these numbers?
The figures were gathered by the consultants from our data. So from our actual facilities use receipts, from our costs, from our facilities master plan, is all district data that they gathered everything to do that. And that includes the custodial hours. And that's an average of custodial hours put on time card for each specific venue or line item. And once again, that is the soccer field costs that we're talking about. We'll focus on that. That is extrapolated over our entire inventory on the district, not just Arlington, but all of that, and all of our use throughout the entire district, and all of our facilities use permits.
Right. Now, sort of to Mrs. Alavi's question review of the use, but percentage-wise, I mean, first of all, is there any nonprofit groups that rent school district facilities?
Oh, absolutely.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah, all churches are probably one of the biggest users.
They're nonprofit.
If they're nonprofit, yeah, we
okay.
verify their nonprofit credentials and.
All right,
and
so
and they are the bulk. We have
churches.
Nonprofit. We have very few direct costs. Or I'm sorry.
So a large bulk of people using public facilities, which they have to pay something for, are nonprofit here
absolutely,
in the city. Okay, and of that, what would you say the overall percentages of sports using our sports facilities? I mean, I know the rooms like this are rare too. There's nothing like Ramona, but so.
Why don't you come up here?
For children, sports facilities.
I'm looking back as Sandy Garcia, who is our facilities use coordinator,
yes.
Is here, and she'll know a lot more of these numbers or percentages. So,
Thank you.
What would you say, percentage of athletic?
I would say they're 90%.
Of all the use of all our facilities, 90% of what you're processing, Ms. Garcia, is for youth sports, or maybe it's adult sports too. I don't know.
Yeah, some of it's adults. It's soccer, football, cheer, baseball,
Adult?
water polo. Most of it's youth.
Most of it's youth, but we don't have the Riverside Rams adult football.
No.
No, we don't have anything like that tearing up our stuff, right?
No.
Okay, thank you. And
We have had in the past rugby club. So
can we decide who and who not to? Lease facilities?
yeah, that is of our discretion. Yes.
Okay, and then when you were putting this together, Ken, and you presented it to Mr. Mueller, you did realize, I mean, that is quite a jump. And from one, how does your department justify that? I know what Ms. Keish has very accurately said, that times are tight. We have to replace facilities. We have very low maintenance, ongoing maintenance budgets, probably about 1/8 of what we should be. But how did you? I mean, you saw those numbers changing so much.
We went through and we looked at all of the rates as they came through, and we had to do a reasonability test on that, and we looked at that. We knew that some of them were. The issue that we had, and let me remind you what's in rates too, is that we didn't have good data on our previous rates, so we knew we had to go back and we had to look at what is our true cost, because that is required. But also understand that with SB 1404, two things changed. We put the direct costs or our operational costs directly into the hourly rate. So now our custodial cost, rather than being a separate line item, is included into all of our hourly rates for our facilities. So that's for every facility. And then capital, SB 1404 allowed us to capture capital costs as well. And
I want to say just, I see where Mr. Hunt is going as far as it's a big jump to our partnership. And it is something that we're doing now that we probably could have delayed it even another 2 years if we didn't have the staff and the ability to do it. So one thing that we can consider, if we approve these fees for the current users, nonprofit users, not necessarily for-profit users, but for the current users, we can establish that we get to the established fees over a period of time of 3 years. Let's say that we
phase them in.
Phase them in within whatever you're comfortable with. If we want to do that for grandfather number of users that are currently within our system, not necessarily new users, we can implement the fees immediately for any new users. But the current partners that we have to support their analysis of their financials as they support these programs, we can do what the state does to us and give some phasing time for them to adjust and inform and educate their families in order for them to support the programs and continue the good things that they're doing within our district. So that's something we can consider, and I don't know what the comfort level of the board is.
Thank you for that enlightened idea. Just let me ask a couple more questions. One, SB 1404, Mr. Mueller, does it mandate? I mean, again, as I like to tell folks, we're not legislators. School boards are not legislators, we're implementers. So does it mandate us to add these things? Does it mandate us to keep with, because I'm going to lead to use of public facilities for a moment, or so what?
The use of facilities, the public facilities, is at the discretion of the board,
okay,
and making the availability of that. That's the bottom line. Now, it is not, in my opinion, inconsequential that a lot of the language in SB 1404 aligns strictly with penal code language about gift of public funds. Yeah. So I do caution the board on that. Right. And there are specific, if we are going to modify rates or we're going to do exemptions, there has to be specific board action on those. So I do want to caution the board, but it is ultimately at board discretion.
Okay, so my final question then is, Mays or you and Tim or somebody, Mr. Mueller, what is our obligation legally as the governing board of use of public funds? A gift of public funds is what we always want to avoid. Mr. Mueller's just alluded to it, so help me understand. If we were going to charge them $1, now we're going to charge them $1.50, and we say, oh, we're going to charge them $1.10. How does that 40 cents, assuming that $1.50 was lining up with all our costs, that to reimburse ourselves, how does that what harm does that put the school district in of free use of public facilities or public funds?
So what happens if the data is really reflective of the cost, that 40 cents is coming currently from general fund, in dollars that would have gone to the classroom, or to support staffing, whether it's in school or after school programs, that 40 cents will be subsidized through that pot of money if we don't charge it. So that's what we're doing. I don't think there's a police, unless it's so obvious you're giving those dollars as a check to someone. There is no police that's going to come and say, hey, this 40 cents is coming from general fund. But I do know that we have partners in the community, but we also have stakeholders within our district. And our bargaining teams, our associations also watch what we spend general fund dollars on. So we want to be in a position to be balanced, having to make sure that we do whatever we can to protect general fund dollars for the operation of our main mission. And so I don't think phasing in these fees would be a gift of public funds.
Okay.
And the reason being is that you're doing your best in trying to give an opportunity for people to adjust to the fees.
So I'd like to, if I may.
Do you
have another speaker?
I haven't spoken yet.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Trustee Young. So I have a few questions. One is I want to get clarity. I was a little bit confused. So you have this existing fees outlined, right? And this was passed 5 years ago or so, 4 or 5 years ago. Is that correct?
The last time our fees were updated was in 2014. Okay,
and then there was some mention about some adjustments that were made that you were charging. I don't know if I understood that correctly. Have you?
That was specifically dealing directly with Mr. Lenox on the use of that and some inconsistencies that we were charging based on actual conditions of the facilities at that, and a lack of documentation and source that I can come to bear with on the fees that we were charging.
Are you saying that you ended up charging more than the fees that had been approved 4 or 5 years ago, or less?
No, they were less.
Okay. So I know that Mayor Bailey and the city have been looking at how Parks and Rec overlay with our school facilities. I just want to get some sense from staff on what is the outlook of that. Are there areas where Parks and Rec, which is really more designed for external use by, kind of by definition, that's their mandate, are there ways where we can potentially have some kinds of partnerships to ease the burden of what the school district when we put it out to the community?
Certainly, we're always looking to partner with the city, and one of the things that I am aware of is that the city does the same type of thing with facilities use fees for theirs for organized nonprofits, and they're consistently higher than ours. But yes, we're always looking for, and we do have a joint use facilities out at Lake Matthews and some different things, and we're always open to that.
You're saying the city's fees are higher than ours?
That is correct.
Okay. And then there was another comment, I think it was Mr. Lenox, that mentioned that there's, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, that there were contributions in kind provided that would basically be offsetting some of the costs that we would be incurring. Is that correct?
And this is just recently that worked, and my staff has worked with Mr. Lenox, because their club, as they've very adequately have presented and shared, are involved in being good neighbors and good stewards of the facilities, and they are using club assets to help with some routine or annual maintenance work of that as a volunteer project, and we've processed that through the civic permits, and absolutely want to partner with them on that.
And those partnerships and contributions, are they being reflected in the way that we're potentially then costing them on the use of their facilities?
Not existing, but that will be discussion that Mr. Lenox and I will have. Absolutely.
So I mean,
no agreement has been made.
Okay, but if the spirit of what we're doing is that we don't want to be subsidizing from our general fund the use of these facilities, right? And the fees are being assessed based on the cost of the school district. If a nonprofit party is providing contributions that would be lowering the cost of the use of our facilities, to me, shouldn't that be?
That would come as I would process that in lieu of payment. So what Mr. Lenox and I need to determine the cash value of that, and yes, it has absolutely positive impact on us, so that could come and be posted as a credit to them.
But we haven't done that in the past.
No.
Not directly with them. We do work volunteer projects all the time, and we process them through civic permits, but not necessarily in lieu of payment. We haven't done that.
So, and I'm only saying this because if the basis of what we're doing it is to offset our cost, I feel like that's justifiable and rational.
I understand that, and I feel the same way.
Okay, so from my perspective, and we still have more comments, but just to share my perspective on this, I feel like, one, I think that's a very logical and in line with the spirit of our policies, that we should be doing that and factoring in lieu of fees if they're providing direct contributions in kind to offset our costs. And with what Ms. Kakisha suggested about the phasing in, to me that seems reasonable in the sense that if we are being mindful about the costs and these financial cuts and so forth, and there was not a proper justification in the past, it's difficult, I think, just for people to immediately kind of hit that. But obviously, we need to ultimately we need to be able to cover our costs. So if there is a reasonable phase-in plan, I think that seems appropriate. Trustee Lee.
I remember my other question. So this club and other clubs and other organizations have been paying to use our facilities over the last number of years, and you had mentioned, Mr. Mueller, that there's a separate pot of money that's restricted funds that can only be used to be reinvested into these facilities. So I think it was again Mr. Lenox had mentioned that there's been no improvements made to Arlington High School since they've been paying the fees. So do we have an account of how much money is in that pot? I'm assuming it's not sufficient to replace synthetic fields or...
No, it's if we're looking at replacing an artificial turf field, no, it's not in that. I can provide. I don't have a balance off me, but we're closing the books right now, and I'm happy to provide that to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing how much has been invested into that.
Arlington is scheduled to be renovated through Measure O dollars, which also can subsidize when a school becomes eligible for the modernization. With our timeline on Measure O, Arlington is coming sooner than other sites.
Okay, so part of the modernization of Arlington High School will include the fields.
It depends on the final design.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the plan. All right, and then I did want to share some of my thoughts too. I do think it's important that we adopt these fees because it is more than just soccer fields. And as you know, we did have to cut, as Mrs. Kakish mentioned, millions of dollars from our budget. And we know that because the state doesn't adequately provide for funding to maintain our fees or our fields, we have to use, our bond dollars to do so. So I do want to say thank you to all the parents that came out today and to the speakers in particular that spoke. I don't doubt any one thing that any of you said. I think that this organization obviously has had a great impact on all of your kids. And there's lots of organizations similar to you providing that same mission. And we're thankful because that's important for us as a school district to have partners to subsidize the things that we do during the school day and in the summer. So in specific, I wanted to mention Ocean. Thanks, Ocean, for being brave to speak up here. You did a great job. And congratulations on all the great things that you're doing, making our district look good. So congratulations on that. I also mentioned during my comments during LCAP about some of the things that I was concerned that I wanted to bring back into the budget had to do with timing and promises made or some expectations that certain programs had moving into the budget cycle. And I do think your proposal, Mrs. Keish, whether it's a year or 2 years or 3 years, I do think grandfathering in some of these organizations so that they have the proper time to budget properly. I also would consider, because ultimately what we want is our facilities to be maintained or improved, and if there is an organization that has that ability or that willingness to do so, then maybe, if we can adopt these fees and there's some kind of a transition phase, we can have an MOU with organizations like this football club that's willing to aerate, seed, as long as there's no conflicts with our bargaining units. So I think that there's a lot of wiggle room without having to abandon all this work to make sure that we're not subsidizing entirely the cost of these things. So I would also ask that we consider that if that's something, whether it's this group or another group. But I would, at the appropriate time, would like to make a recommendation to approve these fees.
Okay, Trustee Hunt.
I was going to kind of go there, Mr. Lee. Let me just ask a few more questions. Is there any reason, we went from a flat to an hourly. Is there any reason we couldn't also consider for these grandfathered, whether it's a church or whether it's this soccer club, our CFC, that we just can't have a flat for 4 hours or like we do now? I imagine your flat right now is for some sort of length of time.
Part of the direction from the Department of Education is to do hourly, and it is specified in education code to have an hourly rate for that. So that was an anomaly in our current code and part of what we wanted to clean up.
All right. So I do believe that with Mr. Lee that we should adopt these fees, yet I would ask to include in my motion that we grandfather in any and all nonprofit groups to negotiate with them and to phase these fees in over because of the social economics of soccer folks usually. And what I've seen in Arlington area, which I represent, I would ask it to be over a 4-year period. So it'd be a 25, 25, 25 added each year, but that allows them, as Mr. Lee was alluding to, allows them to prepare and grow that way. So that would be my motion. Approve the fees as presented, except that there be that we grandfather in any existing, and that include nonprofits from churches to the Quets to Riverside Water Polo to the soccer clubs, and that their fees then be set down. If an MOU can be worked, that's great too, but they be set over an increase of 25% over the next 4 years. My motion.
Okay, motion by Trustee Hunt.
Dies for lack of second.
Okay, there's no second, so motion dies. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a motion? Trustee Alvey.
I would try that motion again, but I would make it over 3 years.
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Trustee Hunt. I have a question before we vote. Regarding the factoring in the contributions and offsetting the costs and the potential MOU and all that, is that something that we need to give you direction formally from the board as part of our motion, or is that something you could directly work out administratively?
We can directly negotiate based on the fees. So what we would do is calculate whatever is being provided based on the value of that in comparison with the fees. And we can do that with our partners that are nonprofit.
Okay, thank you.
When does this go into effect? I'm sorry, when does this go in?
When would this go into effect?
July 1st.
July 1st, okay.
Can we give them a little more, Mrs. Alvey?
We have a motion on the floor.
Yeah, a third over 3 years.
So this year, what would this year be at?
A third of that would be this year.
Depending on the facility, each facility fee will be increased to get to that level by a third of that increase over a 3-year period. So that way, it's kind of like our multi-year projections. It's over 3 years, so it correlates with that.
Okay, no other clarifying questions. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. We'll move forward with phasing in the fees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for our team.
We are going to adjourn for a 10-minute recess. Thank you. fully aware of our plans, and it should be put on the record. That's one comment. The other comment I want to make is the social innovation camp, the inaugural social innovation camp from Junior Achievement is next Friday, June 21st. And I want to welcome anybody who is interested in being a potential mentor or volunteer. The idea is that students are going to come up with entrepreneurial ideas, whether it's business entrepreneurship or social public policy issues. And we'll be having judges and chamber members involved with the competition. Want to welcome everybody. It'll be here at Central Middle School pretty much the whole day, starting at 8:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Trustee Hunt, are you ready? Yeah. Okay, please.
All right. Thank you for those comments. I asked Beth if she'd give you an article I came across that I'd like us just to review. I'm sure it will help us in our discussions about this, but it's called the Soul-Crushing Cost of College in California. And it's not that any of my colleagues don't understand that, aren't concerned with it, and we haven't had a commitment to alternatives for college, but it just underlines what's happening in California in particular. I would ask the M&O staff to stay on the Purple Pipe initiatives that the city has talked to us somewhat. Part of the reason I bring it up again is that Dr. Coe, Justin Scott Coe, has left. He was one we were working with, so let's make sure we keep those that initiative going. It would be very beneficial to both Alcott and Poly if we can do that. Sorry. And I was going to show some. I can't believe you guys didn't bring up about going to the graduations. Just the ones that I got to go to were phenomenal and so touching. Out of my 12 years, this was some of the best. And I could just. Do you have those, Richard? And that's not it. That's Casablanca. And that's just when Angelo and I went there. And happy people. I guess people on the east side need to know too, right? Dr. Farouk, go ahead. Well, I don't know what those are. Keep going. I know you got those. Okay, this is. I want to just mention this was at the Miller graduation. That young lady was our mistress of ceremony. She's an 8th grader. Will one day be someone we'll all know. His name was Chloe Christensen. The young man is the 8th grade president, speaking to gave a very nice speech to his peers, and he is the grandson of Dr. Bill Ermit. That's the Rosas kid. This is just adult education. It's just so wonderful when you go to adult education, and thank the board for letting me to do this year. Just the families that are so excited. Some of them, obviously those graduates took a lot longer to get there than comprehensive, but just you can see this, the happy day. Keep going, Richard. And this is what, with our principal there, I had the honor of giving a high school diploma to Nora here. Nora is 62 years old. Took her several years to get there. She's been in America for 7 years. And I asked her what she's doing next. She's going to go to RCC, improve her English, and get a college degree. So that's what our RUSD does on a year-round basis, and that was just a small sample and the great time I had. Thank you, Richard, for handling that. Those are my comments, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Hunt. We're now going to proceed to our public hearings. And so I open the public hearing at 7:42 p.m. Regarding the formation of Community Facilities District Number 35, the levy of special taxes, and the incurring of bonded indebtedness. I'm asking if there's any person here who would like to wish to present testimony. Trustee Hunt, is there any?
No, sir. There's no cards on this particular item. Thank you.
I call on our Chief Business Officer, Mace Kakish, our bond counsel, to provide a report regarding Community Facilities District Number 35.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk, Board of Trustees, Dr. Hansen. Before you is 3 items that are connected. Action, the public hearing for CFD 35 is connected to 3 action items. So you'll have an opportunity to see if you want to take those 3 actions together or you want to wait for the action item. I would like to call our legal counsel to walk us through the public hearing process with our board president.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Farouk and Dr. Hansen and members of the board. I'm Kim Byrons with Best Best & Krieger. And tonight at the public hearing, you'll consider the formation of the Community Facilities District Number 35. It's located right there on Magnolia Boulevard, just west of basically Van Buren, and it is about 63 homes that will be built. At this time, we would ask if the clerk, if there has been any protest, any written protests.
No protest. There have been no written protests received.
All right. At this time, you can consider whether, unless you have any other questions about the district, the action items to form the Community Facilities District and call the special election.
You're saying we can take the action now?
Does he want to close it?
Or you can close the hearing and then
We'll
take the action now.
Yes, okay. So we will close the hearing at 7:44 p.m. and there was no majority protest. And I'm calling for our Board of Education to consider the following resolutions for adoption. Resolution number 2018-19-63, establishing Community Facilities District number 35 and the boundaries thereof. Resolution number 2018-19-64, resolution determining the necessity for Community Facilities District number 35 to incur bond indebtedness. Resolution number 2018-19-65, resolution calling special elections on propositions regarding the annual levy of special taxes within Community Facilities District number 35 to pay principal of and interest on bonds and establishing an appropriations limit.
And that's all item L1.
Is that a
bond council?
I'm sorry.
It has a line that for you to conduct a special election.
You're ready to conduct the election. So the ballots were received. Did you receive the ballots?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Oh, do we need to first take that action, or is it after?
Yeah, you do need to adopt the resolution.
So does anybody have a motion for the action items outlined?
Dr. Farouk, I would move as you presented on those 3 action items. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hunt. Motion.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Alavi. Please vote.
You have to vote.
Now we're moving to L2.
Okay. Well, we need to conduct the election.
Okay. So the motion carries. Will now.
So now the election can be conducted, and you received the ballot.
Yes, ma'am. I received 1 ballot, and there are all in favor. There was 3 places to mark, and all 3 marked in favor, signed by Mr. Scott Hansen, Vice President for Forward Planning, KB Homes Coastal, Inc.
Wonderful. And now you would adopt the results of the election, and if you desire, the ordinance.
I so move for the what I just reported out to be adopted into the record.
So for resolution number 2018-19-66, is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay. I'm calling now for the first reading of ordinance number 2018-19-2. The board has an option to waive the first reading and read title only ordinance number 2018-19-2, levying special tax.
If it be to the pleasure of the board, I would move to waive the first option, Dr. Farouk. Waive the first reading and read instead the title only ordinance under 2018-19-2, levying special tax.
Okay, motion by Trustee Hunt, seconded by Trustee Alavi. Please vote. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That is all the items for the CFD 35, so we go back to the public hearing segment.
Right. Thank you. Our next item is public hearing to consider and respond to all comments by RUSD related to the annual Selpa budget and service plan. Mr. Tim Walker.
Dr. Farouk, Superintendent Hansen.
Actually, I need to open the hearing first. 1 second. The Board of Education will hold a public hearing on the annual Selpa budget and service plan for adoption. I open the public hearing at 7:46 p.m. Any members of the public who wish to address the board concerning this public hearing should complete a request to address the board card available at the back of the boardroom. And now please proceed, Mr. Walker.
President Farouk, Dr. Hansen, members of the board. Before you tonight is an annual request that comes before you each year in June. It's a requirement of the state of California that every Selpa bring before the Board of Education a public hearing prior to taking action on the Selpa budget and service plan. Be happy to answer any questions at this time. The action items will come to you in the near future under action further in the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Trustee Hunt, is there any public input speakers to be heard?
No, sir, there's not.
Okay, at this time, board member comments regarding the public hearing will be heard. Hearing no comments at this.
I had one in.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Trustee Hunt.
It confused. I apologize. Just want to ask: did this go through a committee? Did our finance committee look at this, or is this outside of that?
The annual budget plan is actually developed by our fiscal services department, and the annual service plan is created by the special education department based on data that is collected from our case miss management system that provides for all information related to IEPs in the Riverside Unified School District. It also was shared with the CAC leadership prior to coming to you tonight.
And their comments, if any?
They had no comments this evening, and they shared that information with Director Jason. So,
all right. Thank you, Dr. Fruit. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Hunt. At this time, I close the public hearing at 7:50 p.m. Okay, we are now going to proceed to continuing our action items portion of the agenda, beginning with Mr. Tim Walker and
L4.
or 4 and 5 actually, our special education annual budget plan.
Dr. Fuchs, Dr. Hanson, I would like to invite Jason Ramirez, our Selpa director, to come up and present this item.
Good evening, Dr. Farouk, Dr. Hanson, esteemed members of the board. Per introduction of Mr. Walker, during the public hearing, the State Department of Education does require each Selpa to submit an annual budget plan that's approved by June 30th. Before you is a copy of the annual budget plan, who was created by our friends in the business department in collaboration with special education. I'd be happy to entertain any questions at this time. And if there are none, I would defer to you to take action on this item.
Can we take them jointly, 4 and 5, or we do them individually?
Yes.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion. Trustee Alvey?
Yes, I'm going to move for approval of item L4 and L5 of the Special Education Annual Service Plan.
Second by Trustee Hunt. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. We will now proceed to our LCAP presented by Ms. Lynn Carmenday.
Good evening, Board President Dr. Farouk, Dr. Hanson, esteemed board members. At the May 21st board meeting, we held the public hearing for RUSD's Local Control Accountability Plan. Tonight, we are recommending the adoption of the 2017 through 2020 plan. Just a reminder, our plan does take into account annual goals for all students and specifically actions and services for our duplicated students, which would include socioeconomic, lower socioeconomic students, English learners, and foster students. The plan also reflects how we monitor the actions and services effectiveness. Before you take the vote, I just want to remind you that we do post that plan on the website. You received a link for that in your mail out. And we also post the feedback or questions asked by the advisory committee, as well as our district English Learner Advisory Committee. At this point, I just would like to thank you for your direction on the accountability plan and recommend approval.
Okay, Trustee Alvey.
And I would like to thank you and all staff for all the months and months of work that has taken place for this LCAP. It showed just incredible attention to detail, and I will move for approval.
Okay, motion by Trustee Alvey, second by Trustee Hunt. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. Thank you again to staff and Lynn for all of your leadership on that. Our next agenda item is our all funds budget. Ms. Kakish.
Good evening again. So we are at the annual item for the budget, which is adopting the new year 1920 school year. And this presentation has been presented to the board in May board meeting. We went into the detail, but I want to just highlight for anyone in the audience that's interested in the book that's also attached to the agenda. I do want to thank staff that have incorporated many items that are going to be so valuable to our community and our stakeholders to have as information. I do want to bring attention to page 33 in the book, which is the multi-year projections, and state to the board that with the adoption of this budget, we have stabilized our budget for the 3 years that are mandated by AB 1200 by the county and the state for certification, and we will project a positive certification. But we also have shifted that the dollars that are supporting the budget in the fund balance used to be more on the restricted side of the house, and now in that page, as you see, our projected ending fund balance after 3 years, which is again required by law to have a minimum of a 2% reserve, and required by our newly adopted policy to be 4% reserve. We have a little over the 4% right now of 31 million of unrestricted dollars. And it used to be shifted that restricted was at that level, and now we're spending the restricted dollars first and safeguarding the general fund dollars to continue to be stable in our budget. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. Of course, after thanking all of the staff, including Erin and her leadership in the business department, and Sandy, even though she's currently out, but she'll be back next week.
Thank you, Ms. Kakish. Trustee Alavi.
And I will reiterate that, all the good work that's gone into that, and Dr. Farouk and I have been a part of the Finance Committee and have seen the work that you went in to put together this impressive book. So I'll move for approval of the budget.
Okay. Motion by Trustee Alavi.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Lee. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. Our next agenda item is Kakish again regarding the agreement between RUSD and Cal Baptist for conditional waiver of school fees.
So before you today is a request that came to the Operations Subcommittee and was studied and comes to you with a recommendation tonight in this approval of this agenda item. So we prepared a very short presentation to go along with this item. Was there a presentation attached? If there isn't, it's okay. So the gist of this item is usually for any buildings that would take place within our city boundaries, we assess fees for developer fees, mainly for residential, and then a different level fee for commercial. And for Cal Baptist, they're about to embark on building a brand new dorms. They have come to us to waive the fees with the fact that the dorms will not house any families. It's going to house students, so that building will not generate new students to our district. So that came to the Operations Subcommittee, and the Operations Subcommittee, and I will be happy for the chair of the committee if you want to add any more comments to this, have recommended that we waive the fees for Cal Baptist. And it does take an action by the full board in order for us to do that.
Trustee Lee?
I think the board has all seen the presentation in their packets, but just to kind of rehash, we've got some public still left here. This is a 93-unit student housing project consisting of a single 4-story building, which is on Magnolia Avenue across from Cal Baptist University. That's going to house 538 beds, 538 students. And the building square footage is roughly 165,000 square feet. And this project is already underway. And my understanding is that they've actually fronted the cost of these fees so that they could get their building permit issued. So I know that I've driven by down that way several times, and they're moving quickly on that project. So California Baptist University has asked us for the same the same privilege that is allowed to RCC and UCR and other government organizations to make them exempt from fees. There is some precedent to this for the board to consider. We didn't formally adopt it because the project didn't proceed, and Mr. Hunt was, I believe, on the board at the time, and he has a little bit more insight and recollection on that. But the discussion that happened at the committee level was basically, these are fees, they're impact fees because they impact our facilities. And since there will be no students generated from these projects, there's really no fees to mitigate from. So I think in being a good partner with California Baptist University and all the relational ties we have in various colleges on that campus, and then being a great neighbor and a good community member, it just didn't seem, because of that and the fact that there is no impact on our schools, it didn't seem fair to charge them $703,000 in fees, so they keep the cost of their project down, since, again, good neighbor, and a lot of our students actually end up attending college there. I think we did ask what happens if California Baptist ever converts this into, you know, either even graduate student housing that would maybe produce a student, or they convert it into a private development, they sell it, and then there is a caveat, I believe, in the resolution that would assess fees at the level in which they would be at that time. So if the fees go up to $8 in 10, 20 years and they decide to convert it, then they would have to pay us at that time, because then fees would be needed to impact the fees. So Mr. Hunt and I, who serve on that committee, we you know, thank staff for looking into it to make sure that we could consider this, and that there was some kind of a precedent in the past. I know, I'm sure Mr. Hunt wants to comment, but you know, at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Trustee Lee. Trustee Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Yes, there is a covenant being signed. So, and as you may know, to get financing for something like student housing, Cal Baptist has to design the places that if they ever went BK or whatever, and they had to flip them, they're easily flippable. They don't put stoves in them. They're piped up for stoves, in other words, and so they're easy flippable private market. Then they would have to pay us. It was before my time. It was in 2006 that the former CBO offered this, with talking to the board, I think at that time, to Cal Baptist. Cal Baptist ended up pulling a 600-bed project that was going to be up against the freeway when they found about the liability laws of forcing someone to live up against the freeway. You'd be all kind of problems. And I think it's something that as you know, board, we do, and I'm in favor of it, we do waive their fees on any classrooms. So this is just all part of their undergraduate program, and we may see not all of them taking advantage of it, but I know that I believe University Village's tall tower back in the probably 2000 had their fees waived, because even though it's UCR, yet you have to be a UCR student to prove it to go in there. It's still private. So we may see this more often, not just Cal Baptist, but you know, RCC is talking about trying to build some dorms. So I would second the motion and hope we go forward.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lee, second by Trustee Hunt. Please vote. Trustee Hunt.
I'm sorry, I thought I did, sir.
Okay, motion carries. Our next agenda item is Ms. Kakish, again regarding approving certification of signatures.
So you're going to see this item multiple times, as our very hardworking Department of HR is hiring to replace many of our staff. So every time we have a replacement in a position that requires to be a signatory on this list, we will bring you an updated list, and this is one of the lists for all of the new hires, including some of the staff in the audience.
Okay, Trustee Alvey.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to move for approval of item L9 for authorized signers.
Okay, motion by Trustee Alvey.
Second.
Second by Trustee Lee. Please vote. Okay, motion carries. Our next agenda item is Ms. Kakish again regarding first reading of ordinance 2018-19-6.
I'd like to invite our legal counsel up back. I would want the aerial to be up for the board. This is regarding CFD 29. And in this case, this is a little unique where we have two areas in this CFD, and the developers have approached us that one of the areas will not have the development and to undo it. So I'll let Kim elaborate on that, and this is a visual to know where that CFD is.
Good evening again. CFD 29 was recently formed, and it had two improvement areas. The developer, as part of their plan, wanted the CFD to participate with the higher level school fee for the district. They have sold the property to a builder, and that tax, the tax does not work for the builder's projected development. So they've asked us to dissolve improvement area number 2, not improvement area number 1. And we have, we don't want to tax people who don't want to be taxed. It's not part of their plan. So we've prepared this ordinance to undo that portion of the district.
Okay, thank you. I'm not able to see this on the screen.
Okay.
Trustee Alavi?
My question is then, it was going to be homes, now it's not going to be homes. Is that correct?
It's still going to be homes. It's just not the fees are going to be paid at the window instead of through the CFD.
I see, they're just doing a different system.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
They're
you.
not going to levy the special tax on the homes. They're going to pay their fees.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions or to entertain a motion?
Dr. Farouk.
Trustee Hunt?
Yes, I would move to approve this as requested.
Okay, motion by Trustee Hunt, second by Trustee Lee. Please vote. Motion carries. Ms. Kakish again regarding the approval of RUSD legislative platform and principles.
So this is an exciting item that we have been doing this just for the second year through our legislative committee and our workshop that we've conducted with the Board of Trustees. We're able to present to you the final platform and the updated principles for the school year 1920 and the concentration in the 5 areas. So if we can use. So just as a reminder, on April 29th, the Board of Education held a special workshop to summarize priorities regarding the legislative matters. And we worked with our consultant, Kevin Gordon from Capital Advisors. The board came to the consensus on their top 5 priorities, and that is district funding, which would include the advocacy to avoid the STRS and PERS cost increases in a way that we advocate for that funding to come from other sources than Prop 98. Special education continues to be a top priority. Mental health for our students continues to be a top priority. Career, technical education, and state facilities bonds. And with that is trying to advocate for the new governor to allow for issuance of bonds sooner than later. And that's very brief background on this item.
Thank you, Ms. Kakish. Trustee Lee?
I just want to kind of echo Mrs. Kakish's comments. I'm also excited about the adoption of this platform. As Mr. Hunt said earlier in this meeting, we're not legislators, so we can't create the laws, but we can try to influence the lawmakers. So I think that's one of our jobs as a board. So I'm glad that we're doing that and participating in that.
Thank you, Trustee Lee. Trustee Hunt?
And it is so important that we do this. I was just at CSBA's delegate assembly, and they're doing everything they can to be more relevant even, and Jeff was there, as a matter of fact. And it's changing so much up there with the charter school power and, of course, the CTA. And if we're not at the table, we're going to be on the menu, is the old saying. And this, I'm very proud to be on a board and with a staff led by Dr. Hanson, Ms. Kakish, that we are going to be players. And we do have right now a unique crease in time here in Riverside where we have 2 excellent representatives in Medina and Roth that are on the right committees. So this is such a good thing for us to be doing. I commend my colleagues, and I would make a motion to approve if that's acceptable at this time, Dr. Farouk.
Thank you, Trustee Hunt. Motion has been made.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Lee. Please vote. Trustee Lee.
I'm sorry.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Kakish, regarding the resolution for Census 2020.
So this item was presented to you in the previous board meeting and was tabled for additional information. So I'd like to just go through some of the answers that we were able to acquire. This action or resolution is in support of the 2020 census data collection. And so one of the questions was about funding, and we have confirmed that the state of California receives more than $76 billion annually in crucial funding to use in the areas of schools, crime prevention, healthcare, transportation. And with that, it gets allocated to schools. It depends on the programs that are presented in the budget for that year. So there is a direct correlation between funding at the state of California and how it affects and impacts positively the funding at the district level. We also reached out to some of the organizations for schools. AXA is Association of California School Administrators, and CSBA is the Board Association, and our local county office of education, to see if they have any concerns about the district adopting a resolution. And they all did not seem to have any concerns, but they all did not really, were not so familiar with a lot of districts doing this. So it is new to try to support this effort, but there is no concerns for the district to adopt a resolution to support the census data process. For federal funding programs and services that are critical for specifically Riverside and Riverside families, we found out also through research is these are the particular programs that are directly impacting our district. And then there was a question regarding the resolution or the bylaws that was adopted to give the board direction when they consider resolutions. We have this statement in the bylaws, and this statement gives you an opportunity to adopt the resolution for 2020 census. So I wanted to make sure that that the board is comfortable with that, and it was requested that we bring the bylaws back for further consideration. But I know at this point, if you are entertaining this particular resolution, this statement in your bylaws allows you to do so. And then the other question that came up is whether or not to change the resolution in a way where we add may versus has. And so the language would change, whereas the potential addition of a citizenship question on the 2020 census questionnaire, instead of has created, to change it to may create an environment of fear and distrust in the immigrant communities. So that's also before you for consideration. If you would to choose to do so, you would just take an amended motion to approve it with that amendment. And that's it for the census data.
Thank you, Ms. Kakish. Trustee Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk. I was silent. I was a little bit silent on this issue last time. It was a busy day, but I did want to pipe in on this time. I do think that, and our bylaws reflect it, that I think whether the community is paying attention to the resolutions that we pass, I think that it is our job to set the tone and set the example for our community. And I think this is one way in which we can, and this is definitely in the realm of policy, and I think it's good policy. The census only comes around every 10 years, and I think this has been the most press I've heard on a census in my lifetime. And I think it's important that we do our job to encourage our community and our families to feel safe and confident in filling out this census, so that we make sure that our county and our region gets their fair share of California's $76 billion. So I would be in favor of this resolution. In regards to the potential change, I don't think change in the language, I don't think there's any doubt that the addition of a question about citizenship is causing an environment of distrust. So, I mean, it's a little bit semantics whether it has or may. I mean, I would argue that it has, but I don't know that it changes the tone of the census. So I'm not making a motion because I know other people want to speak, but when the time comes, I would almost prefer that it stays the way it was originally written.
Thank you, Trustee Lee. Trustee Alvey.
Thank you. I'm reading the missive from Patricia Locke-Dawson, who sent us an email about this issue. And I do agree with her on certain points, and that is that we want to use resolutions a little sparingly because we want them to have impact, and we want to save them for issues that we feel are strong and that actually follow the bylaw that we just read there on the board. But I believe this particular issue is warranted for a resolution. I believe it's a big enough civic engagement issue that we ought to stand up and say to our families and our community that this is an important thing that we all need to do, and that it does impact school districts and it does impact our daily lives. So I agree with her. I think we ought to be judicious in the use of it. I do agree that we ought to know where our lanes are, but I believe that this does fall within that, and I concur with Mr. Lee.
Trustee Hunt.
Thank you. This doesn't just stay with us. How is this resolution going to be used? In fact, Dr. Farouk, since you brought it to us, how would this, I mean, if it just stays in our district and goes out to our families, that's one thing. How will this resolution be used outside of these walls, outside the district?
I think it's intended just to create awareness among our stakeholders, but then also I think there was I don't have the language in front of me, but them to be able to, during off-school sites, to be able to have access to facilities if people want to get information. That's my understanding?
That is, they would go through the use of facilities use. But
right.
Yeah.
So there is, it's not purely a symbolic thing, but that could also be helpful, but I think that would be the extent of it.
Okay. Thank you for that answer. Going back to the bylaws for a moment, Ms. Kish.
Is it this one?
I looked at this too, and I agree. It could definitely fit in here. My concern, and that with Mrs. Locke-Dawson, is that I could fit a lot of things in here. I could fit the global warming in here because it does affect our children. I could put the Iraq War in here, the Afghanistan War, because it does affect our community. I think we have to stay within our lanes. I'm going to say the same thing I said last time. This is not a school district related Board of Education matter. This is a matter that personally I agree with the statements that were made earlier. I think it's abhorrent that people want to try to put a citizenship question, unprecedented in the hundreds of years of our census and all that. But those are Tom Hunt's personal opinions. Trustee Hunt doesn't believe, and I will not vote for this because that this is something that has to do with our district. Lottery money is all statewide, but it trickles down to us in a formula, much like these monies that Ms. Kakish put up trickle down to us in a formula. And I don't want to, and our formulas are based on free and reduced lunch, not on the census numbers. So I don't see that this fits well. I think it puts us in a slippery slope, nothing against census, but it puts us in a slope that we could begin to see other things happen. Well, you adopted this on the census, why can't we do this on the war or whatever? So I'm concerned about where we're going. I respect it coming forward. It is a concern in our communities, and it's a personal concern for me and my family, but I do not believe, politely and respectfully to my peers, that it is an RUSD concern. And I thank you.
Okay, Trustee Lee.
Thank you, Dr. Farouk, and thank you, Mr. Hunt. I do agree we got to be careful that we don't overuse resolutions, and I think thus far, I think we've been pretty good about that. But I think moving forward, regardless of how this passes, I think we should be careful. I did want to comment, I forgot, but Mrs. Alley reminded me about Mrs. Locke-Dawson's email. She does also state that resolutions are somewhat esoteric and not an effective means of communicating, which I would agree with that. So I do think that if we are going to put our board stamp on a resolution, that we do more than just approve a resolution and then just let it sit on a shelf. So I think if we do as a board feel like this is something that is impactful to our district and our community, then we should find ways to share with the community that we've passed this resolution and maybe take further steps to encourage our families to complete the census.
It was my understanding that that is what we would be doing, is outreach to our stakeholders in the community with this information. That was my understanding.
If that's the direction from the board, in the past we've passed the resolutions, haven't always done that, and so if that's the direction of the board, we'll certainly go back and find ways how to cascade this out to our families.
Okay. Well, I think about when we passed the Safe Schools resolution, we held meetings in this room to share that with our families and just clarifying what our position was in relations to the law and law enforcement about what we share and what we don't share, which was all in alignment with what the law stated on the books. But I think there was some misinformation out there that families felt that we shared certain things or we did certain things that we did not do. So I think in that same vein, not that we need to help, maybe we hold workshops, I don't know if that's the best vehicle, but at least getting information out to our families about the census.
Trustee Hunt.
Just thank you, Mr. Lee, Trustee Lee, for saying that. I think if we're going to, it's a great example. If we're going to take positions on something, whether it's a mixed vote or not, doesn't matter. If the board takes a position, we should put it in simple language, particularly this item, that without scaring them, that the census is important, and we, the board, or the district, encourage you to participate in it. We can't take comment on what the idiots are doing in Washington, on what trying to remove things or add things to it, but we can certainly say when it comes your way, you should do this. This is in the best interest. I still won't be voting for your resolution. I appreciate and respect, but I just don't feel it's in the right vein. But thank you. I think it's exactly the way we should do it on our website, and particularly with our Hispanic community and others in written form too.
Thank you, Trustee Hunt. Trustee Alvey.
So I'm going to make a motion that we make a resolution for the 2020 census, that we keep our original language, and that we take every advantage to send that information out to our families.
Trustee Lee, second. Please vote.
Mr. Hunt?
Okay, motion carries 3-1. Thank you, Ms. Kakish.
The next item has already been
Right.
voted on.
Right, we're moving on to the reports discussion. Trustee Hunt?
Yeah, and I think we should look at our outline on resolutions. As I was reading it, I thought, I don't think we're really, it doesn't say we're confined, but it doesn't really allow us to do a resolution where we thank Ron Loveridge, or we thank Kathy Alvey. We commend Kathy Alvey for winning the Athena Award. And if we haven't done one, Kathy, I apologize to you. We should have. But we've done that where we did one for Woody when she retired. We really don't have the leeway in this thing to do resolutions for individuals. And I wonder if you could just have, someone look at that, Dr. Hanson, just so it's allowed. And there's no debate on that in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hunt. Our next section is reports discussion regarding the Special Education Community Advisory Committee. Mr. Tim Walker.
Dr. Fruch, Dr. Hanson, members of the board, I'd like to ask Jason Ramirez and the CAC leadership to come up, and Jason will hand it over to Ashley for a presentation this evening.
Dr. Fruch, Dr. Hanson, members of the board, it is my pleasure to present Ashley Lopez to you, our president of our Special Education Community Advisory Committee. We've got to spend the entire year together, our second year together, and she's going to present to you a year in review, and as well as our CAC goals for the following year. Ashley.
Good evening. Do I have to say turn, or is it going? Okay, so some of our accomplishments this year were we had, thank you. Our 6 presentations at this school in the multipurpose room for our community. The most popular ones this year were on IEP placement, conservatorship, and the youth judo program. We also attended many community events to outreach to families, and we supported families. This year, many of our families that contacted us came from IRC, special education advocates, and a few lawyers were referring families to us first to try to see if they could be part of our community and maybe not have to use those services. So we are doing a good job in outreach into those. A lot of our outdoor events this year we got rained out on with a lot more rain than we were used to. One of our more popular families that have reached out to us a lot was our mom from Poly High School. She had a strong desire for some inclusion programs, and one of those was the guarding. We met with the principal at Poly a few times. We supported them at a community meeting with a lot of the Poly families and some upcoming Poly families. And she was very happy that she got her magic dirt, as she calls it, to be able to start her guarding at Poly, and was very thrilled that there were plenty of RUSD Selpa administrators and RUSD school board members came out to help. That was one that we would have liked to attend, but it happened really fast, and Jason and I and Keith were in Sacramento for that day. We attended Selpa Ledge Day the same time the guarding was going, and it was 2 administrators and 2 CAC members went. We focused on 3 legislative bills, the AB 236, and the need for family empowerment centers. It would be much like the CAC, and we would meet at those facilities, and there's a couple in the state right now, but that is to have more, and 1 in every district where families would know to go to for the same thing, pretty much that the CAC does, because not all districts have a great CAC. We also supported AB 988, which focused on the teacher shortage, and our main focus of conversation this time around was AB 428, which was on the equalization and preschool funding. And then we just have some pictures. We have definitely started to recognize our legislators, and they're recognizing us. I think we've met with Jose Medina for the 4th year now, and he's recognizing our USD CAC, gives us a little bit more time, and building a great relationship with him. We usually get, for some reason, a representative with Roth, but we still get our point across. We had some random children that wanted to take pictures with us, but we're with CAC, we're friendly, so. Our other main event that we help the Selpa with is our annual Making a Difference Award ceremony. At this ceremony, we have over 200 RUSD employees recognized for making a difference. All those nominations come from students with special needs and or their families, and then a few handful that either the CAC or administration would like to recognize. But the mass majority do come directly from students and families, and that is one of our well-attended events. And this year was hands down, you're amazing, and it was a great event. Some of our goals for the next coming up year is a CAC would like to act as a communication hub to parents, families, caregivers, providers, and stakeholders to facilitate enhanced dialogue between the special needs community and RUSD. Another main goal that we'd like to focus on is the CAC goals are to involve the interests of parents, students, teachers, educators, specialists, in advising the RUSD school board and RUSD administration and professional staff in the unique needs and the requirement of students with disabilities, and to improve the functioning of the Selpa and to ensure we have meaningful opportunities to participate in education for their children. RUSD CAC is going to work with the Selpa to get our flyers and notices out and handouts, as that seems to be one of our main hiccups every year. We also feel that a great thing and a goal for 2019-2020 would maybe one of our main events would be somewhere on our RUSD Facebook page to get our name out there and people know what we're talking about, because there's still a lot of confusion when parents get a CAC, and there's a lot of different special needs things going on right now, so our phone calls are kind of lumped together with the trainings that the district puts on, our CAC, things for project team, so there's still some confusion about that. So they saw what a fun events we have, our movie nights, our booths are very popular at events. We didn't have many this year because of the rain, but our movie night, we're just postponing to the beginning of the year. We're ready to go, and it's a great night. Our awards recognizes 200 staff, which could be teachers, administrators, and special ed and or general ed, which is a great way to get the teachers to know what we are, because as we're reaching out, some of our teachers don't really know what we are either, so clearly parents wouldn't. And then just some quick fun stuff. We had Chanel Hawkins with us the last couple years. She was right before Jason, and we worked very well with her. We are very happy with her positive interactions and helping us get stuff done. We're moving on to Margie McDermott, and we've been told that she's super fun, and so are we, so that should be a great relationship. And we're ready to move on. And that's all. Thank you.
I wanted to introduce some of our CAC members that are here. If you could stand up. Thank you. And yeah. And one of our moms over there always comes, so I forgot your name though. But she's always there attending with us, so I wanted to recognize her for always being there for us. Thank you.
Thank you for that report. Great job, Ashley, and everyone at CAC for all of your efforts on the important contributions of special education program. Our next agenda item is a report. Oh, Trustee Hunt.
Can I just ask Ms. Lopez, can I ask you a couple of questions? Is that all right? I won't keep us too long, just to understand. Thank you for what your comments, and no, not every district does have a CAC as wonderful as ours, nor is a progressive special ed department as wonderful as ours, and I give Dr. Hanson and his staff credit for that, and you all the credit otherwise. You talked about, just to help me understand in my vision just briefly, what would a family empowerment center look like?
There are a few family empowerment centers. They're usually in lower income areas, and we are part of the bigger CAC leadership, and most of the CACs feel that if there were more of those in every district, that would be a place that parents know to come, which is one of our biggest hiccups, is reaching out to families and finding families and families finding us. I mean, I think even this week, and it's confusion of what we are. I got an email from the district that somebody wants us to go to their IEPs and advocate, and the district sent in the number. It's not really what the CAC is, but people don't know. They're starting to find our names and calling the district to find us, but that's just a big jump that a parent is going to want help and call the district because they heard my name somewhere and asked for my phone number. So a family empowerment center would be a way that they could reach people, and as our job as a CAC, it's not to advocate, but we definitely can, if you have a question or you have a concern, point you in the right direction if an advocate is needed or whatever other services are.
Do you know, Ms. Lopez, whether Alvord has something like this?
I think the closest one to us is Los Angeles. So it would be a big school district. They would be, I mean, I think in our district, we have something kind of similar like the Family Resource Center. So if it got passed, I can see maybe us just being part of that. But that really is on a bigger scale because we do have a CAC. And even up in Sacramento, we went to dinner with the other CACs, and they all ran to Jason, and he had to answer all the questions. We were the only ones there with our administrators together.
Yes, that deserves it. And inclusion. Ashley, you and I traded emails when that, unfortunately, some folks, and it took me a while to understand it, when they didn't like the Poly Bear Bowl.
I don't think, no, we love the Poly Bear Bowl. That wasn't it. I just think that the things, and some of the families that are come, is the things that are always represented are not inclusion. The things that we are choosing to highlight are not the things that the parents are feeling the most passionate about, and that's where we would like to just offer our advice. The Poly Bowl is a great, fun, feel-good event one time every 3 years. And some of the comments, whether they could have been about one thing or another, probably wouldn't have been what we would have chosen as statements from our special needs students as what we would want put on Facebook. I got to be part of them for a day. You know, those are not what we want to hear our students saying. We want to hear something more positive. We want to see our students just in pictures with our general ed peers. We would just maybe like a different direction of what we are proud of in our district
So
and
are
what
we,
we're representing.
and I'm sure we are with our staff, but I just want to ask her, because you and I talked about it at that time. We do want to do things and be very sensitive. Are we working with you as far as getting y'all more involved in the advisory way on inclusion and help us understand other ways we can create inclusion?
I think that is our next step for our goal next year. We have poly parents that are interested in becoming part of our CAC, so they would really be the parents to turn to for that, because a lot of us aren't directly in RUSD schools, so we really want the parents that are directly in RUSD schools to be having that conversation. We are kind of representing them. They come to us and talk to us, but we can do better on inclusion. I think we've talked to Jason a little bit about it. We would like a bigger, broader thing. I think maybe the definition of what inclusion is can be redefined, because what we feel and kind of what I'm getting back, we're kind of maybe on the same page. I mean, I've gotten comments back that the special ed eat lunch at least once a week with some general ed peers, and to us, that sounds horrible. And to maybe some administrators not in special ed, that's a bragging point. So it's just we're not on the same page.
We probably need to bring it kicking and screaming into the 2019, right?
So I think Polly is making some progress, and unfortunately, you know, some administration have changed, and we spent a lot of time with that one, but that administrator was really on board with some of the ideas, but it's just moving forward, getting rid of some things that keep coming up and trying new ways to be.
Something I brought up to my peers, and I'm sure they're going to be talking about it, but last time, but I think y'all could be so involved, and Dr. Farouk and peers, is that we all know that special ed is an unfunded mandate. It's a mandate, great, being that it's unfunded or it's very little. I think Ms. Keish told me it's about 16 to 70% in real money from the feds. We're fortunate that we have a gentleman who's in Congress that is the teacher congressman, as he bills himself. I hope that we will continue to talk about how we can interact directly with Mr. Takano and bring in the CAC. If he could do something for us in Congress, that would be in his special role now as a member of the majority, plus being a teacher with a lot of experience to bring this up. And I think y'all would make a great difference working with him on that. That's just Tom Hunt speaking now. The board hasn't adopted anything yet, but
And I think a lot of things with inclusion is not cost. It's not a cost issue. Like,
yes, sir.
I think most of our things in all of our high schools and our goal next year would be moving forward and talking to administration about where our kids eat lunch. And we have to come up with different ideas and different plans, and some of our kids need more support. And at Poly, they agreed that maybe just 4 or 5 tables where aides could roam if they needed it, or if a one-on-one aide, they would definitely have to be there for sure, but other students could or could not join those 4 or 5 tables, instead of having 3 tables in a completely different spot than the rest of the students eating lunch. So these things are not going to cost anything more than what we're already spending. Looking at what our special ed students do as job training, what our special education students do as fundraising is a big one, because I think that we have a trend to always have recycling, which is fine, but when it's digging in the trash, it's not, and it just keeps going back to a negative. So if we just change it, we just change the course, and maybe they do a car wash.
Well, I think your board is extremely interested in that. It's only my opinion, but perhaps the way we're looking at special ed isn't much different than when I graduated in the 70s, and we just need to understand the parents better and the modern society. You don't have a member up here, including Mrs. Locke Dawson, that doesn't have a very tender heart and a steel drive to make it better. And we look forward to working with you. And what y'all have accomplished in the last, it's only 3 years, I think we've had.
I think we're going 4 years.
4 years.
The first year was a little rough. I don't know how much we
it,
did,
it's,
but
it's
yeah.
something.
So 3 years of running.
Yeah.
And I know that my own son in the community has a few special ed friends that we've met along the way, but mostly he's with the neighborhood kids, and he is included. So inclusion is just what they do outside of school, and we're just trying to incorporate that within the school day, because it seems to be their school day is reflecting a little different than their community day.
That's the great thing about education. We're always learning, so be good learning. Thank you for your leadership tonight, and thank all of your people out there. And I know there's a lot more parents doing that.
It's getting late.
Thank you,
so.
Dr. Farouk.
Our parents go in early.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Trustee Hunt. Our next agenda item is a report on updates from the REACH Leadership STEAM Academy. Yes, Dr.
Good
Press.
evening, Dr. Farouk, Dr. Hansen, and esteemed members of the board. So it gives me great pleasure. We're going to close out the evening today with our last two presentations. But coming up here, I'd like to introduce Dr. Renty, the CEO of the REACH Leadership STEAM Academy. She'll be providing an end-of-year report that includes an update on some student data and programs.
Good afternoon, Dr. Farouk, Dr. Hansen, members of the board. I'm here to provide that update that you've requested. I'd like to start with just a brief charter school update with regards to where we are since I last presented. Since I last saw you, we had a lottery which was held back in April, where we accepted an additional 61 students through lottery. This was primarily to backfill the open spaces in TK and Kinder. The other 50 some odd students actually came from our student population, their siblings. And so part of our charter allows for a sibling enrollment first, and then whatever open seats are left, then we accept those students through lottery. There was also, I'll just drop down to, I did report on our district, in-district and out-of-district enrollment. And so we currently have more students coming out of district than we actually do in district, 302 to be exact, to 272. Our free reduced lunch population, our low-income students, tend to grow. Now that we've moved downtown, we're noticing an increase in low-income enrollment, which is in concert with our mission and vision of the school, so that's fantastic. And so we were generally around 50%. We're now at nearly 60% FRL. One of our goals and one of our challenges over the years has been to maintain teachers. So we started off, especially in the very beginning, with having a hard time holding on to teachers. And I'm happy to report that next year we have 100% retention of all of our teachers, so that's pretty exciting. Our special ed department, I kind of heard a little bit what you all were talking about in terms of inclusion. We're moving toward expanding into more of a student support service delivery model, where the focus is on supporting all of our students through a multi-tiered system of support, which will include emotional supports for students in the area of counseling for all students in need. So we're trying to move away from that. Special ed department is on one end of the campus and the gen ed is on another side, and so we do adopt that. We have adopted an inclusion model, and again, what we're finding is our special ed department works with our students that need the counseling, and so we're expanding into more of a support service delivery model. So that's something we're working on for next year. We did send a few students to the RCOE Science and Engineer Fair, where 5 of the 6 students actually placed. We're proud of that. And then with regards to a facility update, we are still operating on a temporary occupancy. I was hoping that by the time I came here again, I could tell you that we had our permanent permit. We have had sign-offs by Building and Safety, Fire, and so our last walkthrough now will be Public Works, and so we're expecting in the next month, really in the next week or so, to have Public Works out for their final walkthrough of the campus, and we should finally be done. Was there a question?
Yeah, Dr. Rennie, Trustee Alvey.
Yeah. Thank you. I may be behind the 8 ball. Are you not up by UCR anymore?
We are by UCR.
Oh, you said downtown.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, not downtown, but near down. We're not downtown fully. Yeah,
okay,
no, we're by UCR at Grace. I'm sorry. Did I confuse you? I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, no, we've moved. We're in the same location. We've been here for 2 years.
Okay,
well,
so that's
3
where
years.
you're waiting for your permit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yeah,
No.
I said downtown, but you're right, near UC Riverside. Yeah. So that's the permit. Almost there. And we've been in contact with the city there. So the holdup had been a field that we needed to install. So that's all done. This field's been signed off on. So now we just need Public Works to come and check out the drainage and things like that. Thank you, no problem. Moving on. So, wow, I can't really see that. But I just came to present. These are some of the elementary school success indicators. This comes from the California dashboard. Some of the things I'll be reporting on is our ELA CASP data as well as our math CASP data. We'll go over chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, and a little bit of attendance. So these were the students that took they were broken down in terms of demographics by race and ethnicity. These are the students that took the SBAC last year. About 18% were African American. Hispanic was about 72% or 47%, a little over that. And then white students, 22%. In terms of student groups, 5% were English learners. We had about 51% low income, and you'll see some of the other breakdowns there. This was the overall performance overview, and again, this is taken directly from the dashboard, and you'll see that in terms of chronic absenteeism, REACH was in the red, suspension rate orange, and then ELA and math, we actually were in the green. I'm going to drill down a little bit more. So this is the student group, and we see a breakdown by student groups, and then all the other indicators: chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, ELA, and then math. And what we see is this school overall, the chronic absenteeism is an issue. We see also, if we look at our African American students, they had the highest rate of chronic absenteeism. And you'll also see, if you just sort of like go over to follow that same line over to the English language arts and math, you'll see that our African American students were also the lowest performing. And so we do need students in seats in order to teach them. And so we have started an African American Parent Advisory Council on campus to try to reach the students further, to share that we've been sharing this data with our parents so that they understand the significance of being in school every day. But we do recognize that as a school overall, this is an issue that we're having to deal with. Well, one of the things that we feel like may be an issue is we're not a home school. People do have to drive in, and some people drive from far. And so we do feel like this is an area of focus of ours to make sure students are in school every day so that they can learn. Looking at an academic indicator, ELA, so this is just basically the matrix, basically also from the dashboard, and it basically shows where the colors come from. So that we'll see that in terms of ELA, REACH overall landed in the green, and one of the I guess the calculus of that has to do with the change as well as the status. And so in ELA, there was our distance from the standard was a plus 3.4 points above the standard, and we had a change of a plus 14.5, which landed us in the green, and that's overall. And then in terms of mathematics, you'll see that we are 20 points from the standard, below standard actually, but we had an increase of 15.5 points overall, and you'll see that the school overall is in the green. And then obviously you can see that some of the other breakdowns that I indicated earlier as far as overall performance, and we'll go into that a little bit further. Just again, looking at the calculus, the metrics from online, you can see that our chronic absenteeism is our issue. The school is in the red. Our African American students are in the red. We see a positive 3.4 change, but again, still definitely a chronic issue on campus. In terms of our suspension rate, there was a little bit of an improvement, 1.1 points percentage rate increase. However, as far as suspension rates, there's no demographics or subgroup in the red, but the school overall is in orange. Our Hispanic students are in orange. African American students, I think, are in yellow. White students in orange overall. So that's basically the breakdown of how the colors were derived. So we sort of followed, this was the guidelines that was given to us by our charter school liaison, asking to present this data similar to what I believe you all are used to looking at with our RUSD data. And so we did our best to sort of mimic that. And so this is our success indicator summary, and you'll see our attendance rate to the far left. Prior 2 years, we were at about 95%. Last year, dropped down to 94%. Reading by third grade, you'll see a nice increase upward, and that's from the years 2015 until last year. And the reading by third grade, this data was taken from the STAR. We use Renaissance STAR as one of our normative assessments. And the early literacy data in 1, 2, 3 over, this data comes from I believe we're taking this info from our DIBELS scores for kindergarten through through third grade. And then you'll see our highest obviously was in about 79% back in 2016-17, and then last year a small dip. And then we'll see our SBAC data overall, our ELA. You'll see a continuous improvement there. Same thing for math. And then you'll see a big jump in terms of ELA, English language proficiency rate. You'll see we almost doubled last year in terms of overall proficiency for our EL students. So this is just another way to look at the attendance. We were just trying to figure out the best way to show you the data. And then you'll see 2015, 16, 16, 17, and then last year, we see that dip at 94% last year, and right now we're projecting at another 94% attendance rate, ADA overall. So again, it looks like the flu season hits hard, and we feel it for sure. And so our goal every year is at least a 96% attendance rate, but we're looking at still 94 as we close out this year. Reading by third grade, this is actually taken from our SBAC scores, actually both. And yeah, it's a little grayed out, so it looked fine on our end, so apologize if it's hard for you to see. On the right side of each bar would be our end of the year STAR scores, and on the left, did I do that right? No, left side of the bar is STAR, and on the right side would be our SBAC scores. And you'll see that STAR and SBAC are about the same, but what you can notice over the years, over the last 3 years in third grade is an increase in overall performance, and reading in STAR, and then in how we're doing over on ELA. And this is just a breakdown of the early numeracy numbers, and then we just gave you what it looked like in kinder, how they were performing overall, first grade performing overall, which again we saw a dip last year. Same thing with second grade overall, and you'll see third grade has made the biggest increase from starting at I think that's a 24 proficiency rate in 2015-16 to now, I can't even see it from here, but I think it's in the 50, 60 percentile or 50, sorry, I don't even see it, somewhere higher than before. I know, I'll tell we tried to mute it out because I have a very artistic staff that likes to put a lot of colors on everything. I'm like, just mute it, and now it's way muted, I can't see it. But we can see that there's an increase, especially in the area of third grade. This one we're very proud of as well, and this is our English language English learner reclassification, and you'll see 2015 where we started off, we almost doubled reclassification rates last year, which is pretty exciting. And unfortunately, we do see a decline in our EL kids, and so we're not getting as many students, and we don't know if it's our location, our lack of visibility, but we do see a decrease, but we do see that our programs are working in terms of reclassification. Similar schools comparison. This is a comparison between Reach and Alcott. And again, this data was taken just directly from the dashboard. And you'll see that overall in ELA and math, Reach was in the green with, I should have pulled out my own data, with an increase of 14 points in ELA and an increase of 16 points in math. And then you'll see over 16.
Dr. Renti, Trustee Lee has a question.
Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Renti. Good to see you again. On that last slide, on that English learner reclassification.
Yes.
What is that measuring? 56.5. What is that?
So that's the number of students overall and how many reclassified. So
you had 56%
of the students enrolled.
Okay, so 56% of your English learners
kids
reclassified. So is that cumulative data over the last 3 years, or is that a new cohort of students each year?
That's a good question. So it's cumulative data. So those are the students every year out of all of our students that are EL, the percentage that are reclassifying within a year.
Okay. So over the last 3 years, so your English learner population, 56% of them have reclassified.
Reclassified. So so good question. So in 2015-16, out of all the students that were EL, we had 23.5% reclassified. So then moving on to 2016-17, of all the students that were currently EL students, that's the percentage that reclassified. Does that make a little more sense?
I think so.
It's just sort of like, yeah, it's our in-house, how we try to track whether or not those students are reclassifying overall. But good question.
But we can't really normalize the data because we don't really know how many students are English learners. But I assume it's improving if the bar is going up.
Right. And I'd be happy to provide you with any numbers that you'd like to see as well. But yes, absolutely. And I can provide more information as needed next time for sure to clarify what those numbers mean. Thank you. And so then we'll see, it looks like on our English learner progress, and that's from the dashboard, 60% are at level 4 in comparison to Alcott, which we'll see, it looks like English language arts is in yellow and the same as math, and then you'll see their increases, and then you'll see the comparison between Reach's EL students, their progress versus Alcott. And I can't see all the numbers, sorry. I do have my iPad I can pull out, but I know you can read the numbers as well. But you can see the numbers where you can see the comparison between those two schools. If I were to do the same for, did I move? Okay, Castleview. I want to make sure I'm in the right place, there we go. And then the same thing for Castleview, so you'll see obviously Reach's data with ELA and math being in the green, and then 60% of our level 4 student or EL students at a level 4, and then comparison to Alcott, which looks like yellow overall in both ELA and math, and then their percentage rate. I feel like I need my iPad because I can't see those numbers. I don't want to keep guessing. So hold on one second. I know you can read it, but I want to be able to see it as well. All right, better. Okay, is that Alcott? Castleview, next one. All right. And so I think it's important to note, just in terms of if we were doing a comparison, there's a lot of ways to compare. So one of the things we could look at is points from the standard. So in relationship to, say, Reach and Castleview, as far as ELA is concerned, Reach's overall was green with 3.4 points above the standard versus Castleview, which was 5.6 points below the standard. But we're also seeing ELA for Reach, 14.5 points increase over the previous year, and then from Castleview, 6.7 points. So again, there's a lot of ways to look at the data. For math, Reach was in the green, but they were 20.5 points below the standard with a significant increase of 15.6 points. And if we compared that to Castleview, we're looking at 27.2 points below the standard with an increase of 13.6 points. And again, we're seeing the English learner progress at 32.1%. Moving on to the fourth to the last slide. We did a school comparison, similar school comparison in English language arts. And this is broken down by student groups. And so this is Reach in comparison to Alcott. And again, so Reach and Alcott, both for white students, Reach is in the blue, Alcott in the green. And then again, multitask. Sorry about that, thank you. And so, I mean, you can see that there's, if you look at, there's a few things we could look at. We can say, look at points above the standard, both are above. Reach is at 16.5 versus Alcott 32.2 above standard. Hispanic students Reach in comparison to Alcott, you'll see Reach is in the green with 2.7 points above standard, Alcott in the yellow, and the students, Hispanic students are, I just jumped, make sure I'm in the right place. All right, are, let's see, 33.8 points below the standard. So there's a lot of ways to look at, and I know that you can read the data yourself, but I just thought I would point out a few comparisons. If I were to move on to the same thing for ELA comparison to Castleview, again, you'll see Castleview, there's, moving on, thank you. Castleview, you'll see the white students are 48.3 points above the standard compared to Reach's 16. One more? There we go, one more. And then Hispanic students, you'll see Reach is in the green and Castleview is in the yellow. And then you'll see 17 or 2.7 points above standard versus 30.1 points below standard. And so overall, same thing with social and economic disadvantage. So if you look at Reach in comparison to Castleview, you'll see that Reach, we have both in the yellow, and we'll see socioeconomically disadvantaged students at Reach are 12.3 standards below standard, and compared to at Castleview 46.3 points below standard. So we can drill down in the data in a lot of different ways, and we see here that, you know, some of the numbers are insignificant and we can't really compare, but I thought I would show you that. And did I miss any slides? Are there any questions? Did that clarify anything? And what are, yeah, any questions?
Trustee Alvey.
Not really a question, but
Okay.
I did like this information very much. Thank you. This was very helpful to me to see it the way you presented it, and I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
And my question for you would have to do with board development. I remember we've talked about that over the years, and I just wondered how that was working.
So actually we have 7 members on the board. 2 are parents, 2 are former parents. And so every year they had another open election, and some years we have interested parents, some years we don't. And so the board going into this, pretty much the same board is actually moving into the next year, but the breakdown is basically the same. Yeah, so we do continue to try to solicit. So thank you for asking that. Yeah.
Dr. Rennie, great job with your presentation. My only comment is actually for Dr. Perez. I think, at least for me personally, it would be helpful. I think it's great that we hear from the charter schools directly and we get the presentation. The fact that you're incorporating the comparisons to our schools, all this is very contextually relevant information. But I would also like to know what staff's perspective on whether it's related to the presentation or whether it's other observations of your due diligence and oversight as staff on this. I would just like to know what your perspective on things are in general as a part of the presentation. It could be short, it could be longer, but I would value that kind of input. So I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, Dr. Rennie, thank you so much for your presentation.
No problem, thank you.
Our last agenda item is from Encore, Dr. Perez presenting.
Good evening once again. And so we have Denise Griffin, the CEO of Encore, to present on her program and student data.
First of all, my staff sent the wrong version of our presentation, so our presentation does not look in that clean, beautiful, pretty that we would hope. Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, esteemed members of the board. I'm very excited that we've reached the end of another school year. This year, Encore has their second graduating class in Riverside. For the second year in a row, 100% of our seniors are graduating, with many of them already set on a successful path for the future in 4-year universities and 2-year colleges or trade schools. We have 93 graduates this year. As reported earlier this year, we have undergone a lot of changes to work to move the dashboard in math and English this year and have implemented NWEA Test Whiz for benchmark testing. The results for the current and future testings will show if the efforts that we've put forth have moved the needle. After our meeting last June, my team has been working feverishly to improve programs and retrain or rehire a good portion of our staff. This has been an interesting one because of the fallout from the group of disgruntled ex-employees that had approached RUSD about a year and a half ago. Has been a constant grind on our operations for the school year. The traction that they were able to gain has resulted in a higher than expected turnover rate in our teachers this year. We've made some big changes to administration, and we are looking forward to a new year and a fresh start. With our fresh start, we are hoping for fidelity in teaching curriculum and new energy in the classroom. At the end of the first semester, our Dean of Students left the organization. Mr. Griffin, our COO, has stepped into the role of the Dean of Students in Riverside to fill the gaps and help with the retraining for the remainder of the school year. Going into the next year, I am proud to announce that we have named a new Dean of Students, Mr. Ramsey Hassan, and a new Dean of Academics, Mrs. Julia Dolph. We have created a new position to help us make sure that the rigor of our curriculum, the planning for our professional development, and the fidelity of our teaching falls in line for next year with a new Director of Academics, Mrs. Jessica Meyer. This was a year of on-site audits, walkthroughs, and reporting for Encore. Over the course of this school year, while training new teachers, replacing teachers in administration, and implementing policies and procedures as agreed in last June's RUSD board meeting, Encore had the pleasure of 2 WASC visits, 2 civil rights reporting 5-day audits, 2 CRDC online audits, and 1 FPM. All of these reports except WASC were new to Encore and required extensive training and time. Encore's executive team has been buried for the entire school year in reporting. I apologize for the mix-up with our board presentation that is presented to you this evening. I do understand that 46 slides is way too many slides to cover over the course of a presentation. I wanted to try to give the district everything that was requested of us in January while also keeping the integrity of what Encore is doing intact. When I stood before the board in January, I was asked if I thought our test comparisons were a fair and equitable comparison on the schools that we had chosen. The district and I agreed that the comparison would not be completely equitable. At that time, I had requested an opportunity to sit down with the district to discuss my concerns about like schools that the district had chosen for us because I did not feel that they were asking us to compare what was a fair and equitable comparison. I'm hoping that before we go over test scores again in the fall, I'm able to have that meeting with the district. While the district did give us new information that we were required to compare to, we were not invited to the table to make those decisions. In order to give you a fair understanding of what Encore is doing, I think it's really important that the district understands who the Encore student actually is. Encore Riverside has about 850 students. Of the 850 students, 24% of them came from an RUSD district. 24%. 10% of our students enter the 7th grade without ever having been on a school campus. Over 100 of our students come from Moreno Valley. 100 students come from Harupa. 100 students come from Corona Norco. We have students traveling from 61 different districts when you start looking at Christian schools, charter schools, homeschool programs, and things all throughout the Inland Empire, and this is just Riverside. When we drill down to the results of Encore versus the results of the districts from where our students originate, Encore ranks 3rd in ELA test scores overall. When looking at math, we rank somewhere in the middle, the middle bottom scope on that. We still have work to do with that. And in the future months, I plan on sending each member of the board in the district complete test comparisons because we're trying to disaggregate the information by student that would come from that particular district. But as you know, 850 individual test scores do take some time. Of the 61 districts where our students matriculate, 15 of them have, yes.
Dr. Hansen would like to make a staff comment.
I'm just wondering, I feel that you have the wrong presentation. Maybe we could stop the presentation now and have you come back in July.
That would be great.
I think
that would be fabulous.
I'd ask the board to consider that so that we can actually see the things that you're speaking to.
Okay.
I think that would be best instead of waiting clear till the fall.
Okay, that sounds great.
Board, informally, is everyone fine with that? Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Griffin.
Can we be sure, Dr. Hanson, that during that time that Ms. Griffin and her questions about meeting with our staff can be part of settled and all that?
Yeah, Dr. Perez will follow up on that,
I'm
certainly.
sure.
And this is also why I think it's helpful for us to get your perspective on these presentations as well, to have that insight. So thank you, Ms. Griffin. Sorry for the inconveniences there. And we will now head to our meeting conclusion. Are there any agenda items for future meetings? You said Chicano?
Mike, please.
Just have the staff comment back to us how they might, if the board agrees, be proper to involve Mr. Tucano in talking about budgeting federal money.
So based on your request, if this is amenable to you, Trustee Hunt, this sounds like this would be part of the government committee with Trustee Lee and I. If
I would
you take it to the committee.
I would have a lot of comfort there, sir. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Trustee Hunt, for that suggestion.
Thank you.
Hearing none further, we adjourn the meeting at 9:09 p.m.